Sometimes that is better.
Welcome to the Joy of Pain podcast, where we don't make mistakes, just bloody little accidents. I'm your host, Killjoy Jake, and you might be wondering to yourself, Jake, why are you starting a podcast? You already flap them gums so much. Why do you need to do it for like an hour at a time talking about more horror news? Well, the answer to that question is actually quite simple. I feel as if there are a ton of stories that go by the wayside that I'm just not able to cover because I can't dedicate like an entire video to them. Now, on this page, you might have noticed I used to do these videos where it was kind of just like grouping together a bunch of stories, but I got a lot of comments from you guys saying, dude, just talk about the big story. Like, I just want a whole video about the big story. A couple of months ago, I kind of switched up the format of this page to mostly focus just every single video on a single topic, and it's done wonders for the channel. But the thing that kind of upsets me moving forward is that I'm just missing a whole lot of stories. Like, there's a lot more I'm very excited about that I want to get into, and I just haven't found a place to do that. So I figured, what if I just started like a podcast talking about all these different stories at the end of the week? That might be kind of fun. And I hope it is, and I hope you think it's fun as well, because there's a lot of fun stories that, like I said, kind of go by the wayside. We don't get to cover them on this page. This might be a fun way to do that. I make mistakes because I'm only one human being and I can't cover everything. That would be really cool if I was able to do that, but sadly I can't. So this podcast is for kind of picking up the pieces, going back through the last week of horror, talking about the news stories I missed, or on the flip side of that, some movies that maybe I missed previously in the year. There's a couple that I wasn't able to get to this past year. Like, I didn't do a review of Ready or Not 2 just because I was super busy when that one came out. One of my favorite movies of the year that I wasn't able to talk about either was Undertone. So I plan on covering both of those on this podcast, hopefully before the end of the year, if people are actually listening, if they're actually tuning in. Who knows if they are? But you guys will be seeing this probably Monday. Channel members will be seeing it Friday. So that's also kind of another thing I'll throw out there. If you want to see these episodes like when they come out, channel members will get 3 days to see them before they go public on Monday, kind of recapping the past week of news. So become a channel member, $2 a month. It's nothing too crazy if you want to see these podcasts early on Friday when they release. Well, that's enough of that. Let's finally get into our first big story here. I specifically selected this story first. They're not in order of the past week, just a couple of different stories that I was excited to talk about, but of course didn't get around to them in big videos. This is a big update on Jane SHOENBRAUN. She is, of course, the director of a movie that is in theaters now, at least in some parts of the country, called Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma. Now, I am hyped up for this movie. It is a film that I've been wanting to see since the top of the year pretty much, but sadly, it's not playing in my area or most closely related areas in my vicinity until 2 weeks from now.
Camp Miasma.
Most people are going to have their review out this weekend, but sadly, I just won't be able to get to it until Insidious week. So 2 weeks from now, expect a big review on the new Insidious movie, the new Camp Miasma from Jane SHOENBRAUN. There's something else that week that I'm actually kind of forgetting about. Oh yeah, It Ends, another movie that I missed last year and is now being released in theaters as it was acquired by Neon. But let's stay focused here. Jane SHOENBRAUN, she is doing a brand new series for Netflix called Black Hole. Now, this especially caught my eye, not just because it's from the director of I Saw the TV Glow, one of my favorite horror films from 2024. Jane totally rocks. If you haven't seen her 2024 movie, definitely check that out. And like I said, Camp Miasma is also totally gonna rock. But what's interesting about this is it's an adaptation of Charles Burns' landmark graphic novel, as Dread Central says. I've never heard of this before, but apparently there's a lot of fans who have been wanting some sort of film or television adaptation of it, and I understand why because of this plot description. So, according to Netflix, here's your official synopsis. The series is set in the seemingly idyllic town of Roosevelt, where a local legend warns that having sex too young will cause teenagers to contract the bug. And that's a literal bug right there, a mysterious virus that literally transforms its victims into monsters from their worst nightmares. I love this so far, but it gets even more interesting. So like that alone would grip me, would reel me in, but then there's more. After one reckless night at the beginning of her senior year, Chris, likely our main character, discovers the legend is horrifyingly real. Cast out to the woods alongside the other infected teens, she soon realizes something even more terrifying is stalking them, a serial killer hunting the infected one by one. I love this. I love this so much. That sounds like such an interesting premise for a horror thing. I mean, it sounds like we're getting into some body horror, some sci-fi, as well as some slasher elements here. That just sounds like this beautiful little marriage of all these different subgenres. I am so in love with this. The first 2 episodes are allegedly already done, which Jane is going to be writing and directing most of them, which is crazy. I believe she's written all of them, only directing the first 2, if I'm not mistaken. But she's already completed the first 2 episodes. And she even said this, which gives me a lot of confidence in the show. Jane said, "My biggest fear is that I end up making something I'm not proud of," she told Vulture. Now, I think what's awesome about that is when somebody is worried that, oh, this material's so good, I really want to bring my all to it. That tells me that you're going to do that. You know, you have that in the back of your brain through every single decision you're making while you're directing. And at least in my opinion, everything I've seen from Jane so far, even her first feature, We're All Going to the World's Fair, feels very focused. You know, there are things maybe I wanted more from her first movie that I think I got more so out of I Saw the TV Glow, but I definitely feel as if she is just every single new movie I see from her just gets better and better, every new project. And we're even hearing from this new Can't Miasma flick. It's really good from people who got to see it early. It's got a 99% on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm predicting, and I don't think it's too crazy of a prediction, to say that that movie is going to be even better than I Saw the TV Glow. And that would be awesome because, like I said, TV Glow, man, that was a banger from last year, especially as someone who has a lot of trans people in their lives. That was a movie kind of about that. And I thought that was really interesting. My sister, I actually took her to that movie with a friend of hers that both of them at the time were transitioning. And that movie means a whole lot to me as someone whose family members, a lot of friends of mine are trans. And it was just like, I brought them to this movie and they were like in tears crying the whole time. So it's a movie that's very personal and special to me. And I'm so excited to see what else she does because that movie just means a lot to me in my little weird horror world. I can't wait to see what this is all about. 2 projects that feel very, sexual and sex oriented. Weird story to start this one off with, right? We're just getting down and dirty with kicking off this podcast. But at least for me, I'm very excited for both of these things. I can't wait to see this new movie. Can't wait to see this new series, which sounds like they're moving pretty quick on it. I imagine we're probably going to see it sometime next year. But as of right now, we don't have a release date. But it does sound really fucking awesome. And I can't wait. Next up, we have an update on the new Jurassic World film, Jurassic World 5, or I believe this is the 8th movie, if I'm not mistaken, in the Jurassic Park franchise. Gareth Edwards has exited the project over creative differences, which sucks. Because at least for me, and I don't know if everyone holds this opinion, probably not, Jurassic World Rebirth, I came out of that movie and it has its problems for sure, but out of all 4 of the Jurassic World films, easily no contest my favorite. And I think where a lot of that comes from is I just don't like Chris Pratt. I think he was amazing on Parks and Rec. I think he's really good in Guardians of the Galaxy. And outside of that, I could not care less about his film career. I just think he is miscast, constantly playing this like super badass macho dude. And again, I fell in love with him as the silly guy on Parks and Rec. That's like where he's best. That's why I love him in Guardians of the Galaxy when he's just being silly Star-Lord. But when he's trying to be like this character he is in Jurassic World, it just does not work for me at all. The whole doing this in front of the Raptors, at least for me, I just find it really goofy. I can't take him seriously. So whenever he's trying to do something along those lines, doesn't really work for me. A lot of his voice acting isn't necessarily anything special either. It's just him. In the Mario movies, dude, he's easily the worst part of those films. Mamma mia. He's not, you gotta do an accent. I'm sorry. You gotta do something to sound like Mario. And it's just Chris Pratt's. If I close my eyes, I wouldn't be able to tell you that was Mario. Even Charlie Day's given it a little something, right? But I don't know. Chris Pratt, ever since he left Parks and Rec, I just feel like I haven't really been too big of a fan of him. And if I'm being real, that's kind of what killed a lot of those Jurassic World movies for me, was his performance. But this movie from Gareth Edwards from, was it a year or 2 ago? I can't remember. But I got to see Rebirth early in a really fucking cool theater by us too. It's this place that, I don't remember what the theater is called because it's a weird chain that I think we only have one of in our area. Just awesome fucking speakers, Dolby Atmos surround sound. The seats move and shit. It was a great screening of that movie, and I've seen it again since. I definitely don't love the characters, but like I said, I think they're better than the previous set of characters we had. It could have been better, but it was better than Dominion and whatever the other Jurassic World movie is that I can't remember the name of. Definitely better than those two, because those were pretty forgettable. I can't even remember the one's title. But now THR is reporting that Gareth Edwards is leaving the 5th Jurassic World film, which was supposed to be a sequel to Rebirth, bringing back Scarlett Johansson, Mahershala Ali, and Jonathan Bailey, who are all expected to return. Now, that movie did leave us on a little bit of a cliffhanger, leading us into like the next chapter of that story, which the other thing I love about Rebirth is it totally delivers on its subtitle. Like, it's a movie that is birthed out of the previous 3, that trilogy, but it also is totally disconnected at the same time. So it feels like a one-shot, but also it does kind of pick up the pieces from where we left off. You know, the dinosaurs around the world are all dying, and now we kind of built a whole story and possibly a new trilogy all around that, considering that Rebirth also pulled in $869 million at the box office. Of course, they're going to be making another one. Now, Rebirth is a movie that I brought up a couple of times on the page recently, if it was our latest Scream 8 update. I brought up this movie because it's a film that kind of went back down to a smaller budget versus Dominion, which anything is a smaller budget than Dominion. Jurassic World Dominion is the most expensive movie ever made, ever assembled. They got every single legacy character in there. They got all the new cast as well from the previous 2 films came back. It's a crazy movie, man, and I think it is definitely the lowest point of the series. But it did make $1 billion, so we're gonna keep making more of these. I think this is the direction for a lot of franchises that kind of just go through the nostalgia ringer, right? Just like, we're going to put as much nostalgia into this new movie as we can. Now that we've made our money back on that, we give ourselves a rebirth, which is something with a smaller cast, a cheaper cast at that, but you still have some big stars here, man. I mean, Scarlett Johansson, Mahershala Ali, they were great in that movie, man. They really were. Again, the writing of that movie could have been a little better, but ultimately, at least in my opinion, simpler story, less complicated, full of action, full of crazy dinosaurs ripping people apart. I can't complain. As a Jurassic Park fan, I really enjoyed that last one. I'm excited to see whatever comes from this sequel, but I do hope we get another very competent director. I really like Gareth Edwards. I feel like he gets a lot of shit, but I really like a lot of his movies, so I'm actually kind of sad to hear he won't be directing it, but I'm excited to see who they pick up next. David Coep is writing again, one of the writers of the original Jurassic Park. I'm excited to see where it goes next, man. Bring it on. Next up, we've just learned exclusively from Dread Central that a brand new Puppet Master reboot may be in the works over at Blumhouse, which is like the weirdest update I think we could get in this entire week. Wow, a lot of strange things happening here. So I have to be perfectly honest, I have never actually seen a Puppet Master movie. I am aware of these films. There's like a fucking 1,000 of them. I've never actually seen any of them. Full Moon Features, not necessarily my cup of tea, but every now and then I see one from them that I'm like, okay, now that was pretty good. That was pretty funny. It is camp to the extreme. Campy, B movies. Like C movies, if we can go even lower than that. Puppet Master is easily their flagship series, and to hear that literally from Charles Band himself, that they've penned some sort of deal with Blumhouse to make some new movies or whatever, or brand new series, whatever, that's pretty exciting. So let's talk a little bit about this. This comes directly from his latest book, which I believe was some sort of like autobiography. Charles Band specifically said, "We finally closed a deal with Blumhouse, the biggest name in what's left of the horror world." That's really negative. What's up with that? It was the horror world's booming right now, Charles. What are you talking about? It was a lucrative option deal for them to make a big reboot of Puppet Master, a movie, yes, and possibly a series as well. Best of all, I get to hold on to all my Puppet Master stuff, the movies and the merch. Honestly, I can't wait to see what they come up with. It's some sort of like joint venture between Blumhouse and Full Moon, which is 2 companies I never thought would be working together. But this is nothing new for Blumhouse, who has struck up deals with like various studios to make brand new continuations and whatever different franchises they might own. Morgan Creek with The Exorcist, for instance. The biggest example recently is Blumhouse signing a deal with Lionsgate to do a bunch of different properties, like bring back a lot of their properties. Saw is one of those. Lionsgate owns Twisted Pictures, and probably the one that we're really getting moving on which is coming out next year, which I'm excited for, is a brand new Blair Witch Project movie. I love found footage, man, so I'm always down for some more Blair Witch. We got a new Paranormal Activity coming from Blumhouse next year. Bring it on, dude. Hell yes. Blumhouse is, I think Blumhouse is in this really interesting state right now. Jason Blum even said in an interview recently that he's like, we're trying to cater to the younger crowd to get them to the theaters because they'll show up if we make things they want to see. But the studio model as it stands is outdated. You know, we're making all of these different movies based on IP that, you know, the older generation likes. And not to say that those movies are bad, not to say that those movies shouldn't be made, but it is also to say that, well, maybe we're not making movies that the younger crowd is actually interested in. You know, and I think that's a very good point to be made. I think that's why Blumhouse and Atomic Monster are killing it this year with movies like Obsession and Backrooms easily being the most talked about horror films of 2026, without a doubt. And then you look at something like, you know, Masters of the Universe not doing very well. Not a horror film, but kind of fits that mold of like IP from times past, something popular a long time ago that maybe isn't as popular now. Scream 7, for instance. Yes, that movie made a ton of money, but the critics ripped it apart and audiences alike. There's obviously people who like it, and I know a lot of people who will be watching this probably do like Scream 7, but I think you're living under a rock if you're not realizing that the vast majority of people did not like that film. And that just goes to show that I think people, and especially the younger crowd, are looking for something fresh, IPs to call their own. Blumhouse understands that. Now, this, however, is a move that doesn't necessarily line up with all of that. But it's also not a move that isn't in Blumhouse's personality, in their kind of cup of tea. And truthfully, I think it's not just them focusing on the younger crowd. It's them focusing on all the different things that they can hit on in order to just make as much stuff as humanly possible so that we can attract a crowd of people that is incredibly diverse from every single demographic of horror fans. And Puppet Master is a really interesting one to hit on. Definitely won't be their most popular thing, but there are certainly Puppet Master fans out there. Like I was saying earlier, if there is any flagship series for for Full Moon, it is without a doubt Puppet Master. So for Blumhouse to be doing it, that could easily be the biggest thing in that franchise's history. There's something else that this article details about Puppet Master that I actually didn't know, and this really fascinates me. I'm a really big fan of S. Craig Zahler. He's this weird filmmaker that made movies like Bone Tomahawk. You might know that one. My personal favorite from him, though, is Brawl in Cell Block 99, a movie I would not recommend to most people because it is just a heavy watch, of a heavy motherfucking watch. And I would call it a horror film, even though I think most people looking at it from the outside would be like, oh, that's kind of like a jail movie. No, it's a horror film. It is like a hellish, terrible, it's a descent into hell is what it is. But just, it's like Dante's Inferno, but told with a guy going deeper and deeper into the prison system. And it's just, it's terrible, but I loved it. And I'll never watch it again, but I loved it. S. Craig Zahler, he's one of those guys that he's kind of like, you know, we were just talking about Eli Roth on the page with Ice Cream Man, something I won't be covering in today's podcast, but he's one of those directors where I don't really agree with a lot of the things he's saying, but I love his movies. God, I love his movies, even if I'm not too big of a fan of the person. And he actually wrote the most recent film in the Puppet Master franchise, which is Puppet Master: The Littlest Reich. And I, again, had no idea that the Puppet Master movies had Nazis in them, but apparently that is so. I'm going to have to sit down and watch these. I do have a weird story about Puppet Master that I'll tell very quickly, and we'll move on to the next thing. I was actually supposed to work on a Puppet Master movie that was going to shoot here in Cleveland, Ohio, and then the film got canceled, sadly. But I was actually like, I was prepared to be a PA on one of the Puppet Master movie sets, and I was gonna like watch all the films and stuff. I was all excited. Movie got canceled. I was friends with the director and everything too. It was like I was kind of hyped. I was like, oh, that's a real franchise right there. I could be working on that movie. That's nuts. And sadly, it got canceled. It didn't end up shooting here, but maybe one day. You never know. I'm holding out hope. Here's a quick one that caught my eye here. Sony Screen Gems has landed a supernatural horror film called Mime. And we don't know much about it as of right now. Deadline has just reported this. There's no official log line. But the outlet notes that they've heard it's a movie set in an NYC apartment complex during a heatwave blackout. Now, it stars John David Washington from Christopher Nolan's Tenet. It's directed by, and I'm going to totally butcher this name, I'm so sorry, Nikyatu Jusu, maybe? Made a movie called Nanny that was really popular a couple of years ago. It's a script from Stephen Herman as well, who did Black Box. I'm especially interested in this one because it comes from producer Scott Derrickson, who I've just been a mega fan of since like pretty much the moment I saw Sinister. I was like, I love this guy and I will watch everything else he ever makes. And I have. But knowing that it's coming from him, knowing that it might have a vibe similar to what he does, I'm totally down for it. Are you kidding me? That's so cool. I also love stories like horror movies in general that just take place in like one location. That's hard to do, but if you can do it right, I've seen some good ones that are really fucking cool like that. So this is one that's really interesting. I'm excited to see what it's all about. Screen Gems every now and then throws out some pretty cool movies. So this, I think, could be one of them. Is it about a killer mime? We'll just have to find out. Another quick story here. We have a new movie coming out early next year called A Man in the Woods with an Axe. This especially has me interested because the plot description for this movie, which again is titled A Man in the Woods with an Axe. Love that title, 10 out of 10.
A man in the woods with an axe.
It's described as a found footage meta slasher that intentionally presents itself as one thing on the surface before revealing itself to be a very different animal once the layers are peeled back. It's a bloody love letter to 1980s horror cinema, blending practical gore, slasher mayhem, and dark comedy. Tonally, it sits somewhere between Friday the 13th and The Truman Show, thrown into a blender with comedic elements reminiscent of Tucker and Dale vs. Evil and a wild escalating second half that channels the energy and unpredictability of The Cabin in the Woods. I love all of that. You just named so much shit that I love, and you said that's all in one film, huh? I'm in. Let's do this thing. Let's make it happen. I'm so down. I saw a trailer from it as well, which makes it out to be very low budget, but very fun. It was made for $10,000, so it could be bad, or it could be something really special if the concept demands to be seen. And I feel like this might be one of those movies, something to look out for next year, likely going to land on streaming somewhere. But I'm quite excited for this. I can't wait to see what it's all about. I need another good found footage movie. I worry I've seen all the good found footage films. This is a bit of a sad one here. We have Victorian Psycho moving its release date a couple of months into the future, which sucks. I'm actually kind of bummed about this one. This one was supposed to come out like a day after my birthday on September 25th, a movie I'm so excited for. It's Micah Monroe killing people in the Victorian era. I mean, yeah. So instead of September 25th, though, it's moving to November 13th. And I think that makes sense because there is a lot of competition this upcoming September with Resident Evil dropping. We have a ton of different horror. I mean, every single weekend of spooky season, pretty much, we have some sort of huge movie dropping that has a lot of people's attention or has people really excited. Literally the week after that, we have VHS, a new VHS movie dropping, and that's gonna pretty much dominate the conversation if it's anything like last year with VHS Halloween. It's a tough spooky season to release something. So I understand moving this to November, but it definitely does make me a little sad because I'm really excited for this one. So we'll see it eventually. It's going to happen in the middle of November now. If anyone's curious, it's set in Victorian England. Like I said, the gothic horror film follows an eccentric governess who arrives at a remote manor where increasingly strange events lead the household to suspect she's hiding something far more sinister than anyone imagined. Now, I already made a huge video this week talking about Insidious, but I do want to make a note that there is a lipstick demon popcorn bucket. I only briefly talked about it in my brand new video this week. So if anybody wants to get their hands on this thing, go ahead and pick it up, but don't do anything gross to it. Why is that thing's mouth open? Look, maybe I have a dirty mind, okay? Maybe that's what's up, but why does it look like that? This next update is not for me. It's maybe for some of you, but I can only react to this with a big ol' with a big old sigh. Friendo is back. Clown in a Cornfield Part 2 is on the way. The movement of that film was so goddamn boring that even a killer clown with a chainsaw couldn't keep me entertained. That movie was the biggest waste of time. It's the second movie I've ever walked out of the theaters of because it was just genuinely so boring and so predictable. I have no love for Clown in a Cornfield, but I know that a lot of people really did enjoy it last year. I don't know, crazy boring. Maybe the books are better. I've heard the books are really good. I've heard people say that the books are awesome. And I know that the dude that makes them, his name is Adam something, is just so, like, like, he's so nice. I've seen nothing but people praising this guy with how nice he is. And it makes me sad. I want to like all these movies. I want to like this movie. I hear this guy is super cool, but man, I mean, that's one of the worst horror movies I've ever paid money to see. And it makes me sad, but I'm glad it's getting a sequel for people who are fans of this. And I can't wait to see what comes of it. So we'll see if that clown is still in that cornfield in part 2. Next up, we have a very bizarre story that happened all the way back to last weekend when we heard that Alien Romulus 2 had been shelved indefinitely. And it was just a very weird announcement because it seemed like we were really getting moving on that after the big success of the first Alien Romulus. It's a beloved sequel in the Alien series now, probably one of my favorites outside of Aliens, which is untouchable. You're never going to do anything better than Aliens, but Romulus it's close. It's up there. It's pretty good. I really enjoyed it. Nothing's going to ever beat Aliens, though. Let's just make that very clear. But Steve Asbell, president of production on 20th Century Studios, actually retweeted this post and said, nope, we're still making it, damn it. We are still making Alien Romulus 2. But there is a little bit of some weird something's going on behind the scenes, because originally we heard that Michael Sarnowski, director of A Quiet Place Day 1, was in talks to direct whatever the sequel was going to be. There was a big news story on it, big announcement, Michael Sarnowski doing Alien Romulus 2. Now it seems as if Brian Duffield, who is another very big name, another great candidate to do an Alien film, is reportedly helming a different Alien movie in general. So my thoughts on all of this is that I think they're not doing an Alien Romulus 2, so to say. Just another Alien film from a different director who has made some great Alien stuff. Brian directed the criminally underrated Hulu feature No One Will Save You about an alien invasion. So again, perfect for dealing with xenomorphs next. And he also has a movie coming up this fall called Whale Fall, where it's Austin Abrams and I believe Josh Brolin in this movie. So it's kind of a weapons reunion. It's Austin Abrams as a diver and he gets swallowed by a sperm whale. So it's like the story of Jonah essentially, but in a horror situation. And I'm really excited for that one. But Brian Duffield, great candidate. Michael Sarnowski is a great candidate too. I hope he is able to make his own Alien down the line as well. But I think what might have gotten confused, I don't know where the whole Alien Romulus 2 has been quiet thing came from, but what might be happening is they're not necessarily making a sequel to that story. They're not continuing that. This is speculation, by the way. I think Brian Duffield's going to be doing his own thing, just in the Alien universe. Just like how Fede Alvarez just coming in to do his own thing, right? And now Brian Duffield may be doing the same thing. I'm totally down for that. That's essentially what we've done with the Predator movies recently. That's what we've done with the Evil Dead movies recently. And all of those have been very successful in both cases. in both situations, those have been pretty big hits with fans and at the box office. Evil Dead Burn is coming back a little bit, but it had a lot of competition. I think it's a great movie, but it had stiff competition. A lot of great movies fall into the wayside just because of being released at a weird time or competition, whatever. If it's Evil Dead Burn, if it's 28 years later, The Bone Temple, both great movies, just sadly didn't do good at the box office. But I really think what all of this is going to boil down to is Brian Duffield's doing his own Alien movie. It's not a sequel. We're not going to see the same characters. And I'm personally fine with that. Would I like a sequel to that story? Sure. But I actually kind of like that our characters just got off with a happy ending. Or I should say the two characters that lived through that one. So this is another story where I'm like, I'm not gonna make a whole video about this, but I do want to talk about it, which is another great reason we're doing this whole podcast thing now. The Mummy posters have been pulled from the London Underground over distressing imagery. Apparently over 30 different families have reported that they don't love that this poster showcases a dead child, which hilariously is not the case if you've actually seen the movie. I think that's the funniest part about all this is that this Katie, spoiler alert, lives through the film. She makes it through and she's no longer all mummified and shit. So I just think that's extremely funny for people who like just haven't even seen the movie. They don't know what they're looking at. But apparently, according to UK's Advertising Standards Authority, sounds like a lot of people who are a whole lot of fun over there. They've ruled that the outdoor posters for Lee Cronin's The Mummy breached its advertising code after determining the campaign presented a realistic impression of a dead child, even though she's a mummy. She's still alive, you buttholes. But I think this is just kind of metal as fuck, if I'm being real. There's not really much else to say besides that. It's just the fact that, people see something, they're upset with it, they complain. They don't actually go and see the movie. They don't look up context or anything. They just see something they're upset with. They get angry about it. Point being, I think that if more people had actually learned about this movie, learned what it was about, I think this whole thing could have been avoided. A brand new movie lands on VOD August 7th. So if you're seeing this whole podcast thing when it releases, this movie's out. Or if you're seeing this on Monday, this movie's been out for a couple of days. So Big Baby, it's this brand new movie from Spider One, who is a frontman of Power Man 5000 turned horror film director. It's a band that I've been a fan of for a very long time, and it's so hilarious that he's like making horror movies now. Fuck yeah. This one sounds like it could be his best yet. I have not seen his other film, Little Bites, but it has Chrissy Fox in it from Terrifier 3, so I've been meaning to watch it. It's on the watch list. But Big Baby, this one sounds right up my alley. It sounds like a high concept kind of thing, but ultimately comes down to some crazy slasher vibes. So essentially what the film is, it follows a horror screenwriter named Adam Lewis, whose latest script is inspired by a recurring nightmare of a maniacal killer in a baby mask. When those visions begin to bleed into real life, Adam must confront his unraveling mind and stop the nightmare he may be bringing to life. Now, that has me really excited. I love that. That sounds very meta. It sounds like a movie about making movies, which is just a weird little subgenre that I fucking love. I love movies like that. And it also, again, has Chrissy Fox in it from Terrifier 3. And speaking of some other Terrifier alum, Catherine Corcoran is also in this movie. Color me excited, baby. I'm down to see this one. Now, I was hyped up for this movie. I'm like, I gotta check that out when it releases. But then I saw the first clip from it that released, which you can currently check out over on Brainstorm Media's YouTube channel. This clip is crazy.
Kill them all.
It is immediately so scary. And again, this is one of those movies that you can tell is maybe a little low budget, but dude, this clip is effectively creepy as hell, man. It's this little boy who's like completely, this sounds gross where I'm starting this, but it's this little boy, he's wet from head to toe and he's talking about drowning. And it's clearly like in the middle of a nightmare that this dude is having. And then he gets attacked by the Big Baby. And I don't know. I don't know where this is going. I think this is all some sort of like psychological thing that's going to turn into a little bit of a slasher too. But personally, it has me really excited. Big Baby sounds fucking insane. I'm so down for this weird concept. And you know what? We need another baby masked killer because I don't know if Happy Death Day 3 is ever going to happen at this point. So I can't lie. This is the weird little update that I'm maybe the most excited for. I don't know if anyone watching this is going to be the most excited for this update, but I certainly am. We have a brand new season of the Creep Tapes dropping less than a year later after season 2 arrived last November. Season 3 is dropping on September 15th now. Breaking the whole November release dates of the previous 2 seasons, we're getting the first 2 episodes of season 3, September 15th, over on Shudder. Now, this is a bizarre changeup because I don't really know why we're getting it on September 15th, which, if I'm not mistaken, is that that's like a Tuesday. That's a weird time to release what I remember was they released on Fridays last time. I don't know what's going on, but every Tuesday now they're dropping on Shudder throughout pretty much all of spooky season, which I think is dope. 2 new episodes will roll out weekly. That might be why they're doing it, because they are shorter episodes of television. So they're dropping, it's going to be 3 weeks, 2 episodes every single Tuesday. You know what? I'm down for it, honestly. Bring it on. I can't complain about getting this any earlier. But the other really exciting things about this, if you know what the Creep Tapes is all about, it's Peach Fuzz from the movies. These are all his different tapes of some easier kills that he's gotten. Now, what has me excited about every Creep Tape season is who is our victims. Last season, we had some really high-profile guests. David Dastmalchian, maybe being my favorite, playing a Peach Fuzz copycat killer that Peach Fuzz ends up going after. That was probably my favorite episode of the last season, even though there was a lot of great ones in there. But this season, pretty much every guest star is pretty exciting that's been announced here. We have Kate Siegel, who just love her to death. She's made a lot of really cool stuff. If it was that segment in VHS Beyond, she directed that one, and her husband, Mike Flanagan, even wrote it. So Mike Flanagan, Kate Siegel, love them to death. I can't wait to see what Kate is doing in the Creep universe. We have Nick Hamilton from It, which is really exciting. Aura Duplass, who is Mark's daughter, in one of the episodes. We had his wife, in last season, which is crazy. Katie Aselton was in the last episode, so I'm guessing that his daughter is going to be the final episode of season 3, and probably the one I'm the most excited about is Elliot Fulham is going to be a guest. He is of course Jonathan Shaw from Terrifiers 2 and Terrifier 3. I'm over the moon excited about that one. That's crazy. Elliot is awesome. He is a friend of the channel. I've met him and his very lovely family a couple of times now, if it was at the stream premiere or at various conventions. Elliot and his whole family, they're just the sweetest people. So damn kind. And it's so cool to see him in this series. I know that he's a fan of Creep. Like, even before he was announced to be a part of this, I know he's been a fan of this series for like the longest time. He even has his own short film that is wolf oriented. I'm failing to remember the name of it right now, but I know he actually made a short film that has something to do with wolves, and I can't remember what it's called right now, but it was super creepy and really cool. So for him to be a part of this, that's super dope. He's clearly a fan. I'm just so excited to see that episode in particular, because you know there's going to be a lot of like passion and wanting to make this something really worthy of being a part of the Creep franchise. I can't wait to see it. But what is Peach Fuzz getting up to in this season? Last season, a big note I'll make about last season is they kind of just threw up the middle fingers at anybody who was hoping for some sort of connective tissue. There was a big episode in season 1 that lent itself to more about like the Creep's mom, and then the last episode of season 2 basically said, oh yeah, none of that meant anything actually. Get wrecked, idiots. So I guess the whole vibe of this show is to be episodic and its own thing. But what's weird is that they keep talking about how this is all leading up to a Creep 3. So like, I can't help but look for connective tissue. There's even a little bit of tease in season 2 that we were doing more with the cliffhanger at the end of Creep 2, which of course featured someone that got away. And that we never knew if anything came of that. You know, did the Creep go after her or not? I don't know. Are we going to do more with that? I'm not sure. Only 4 guest stars have been announced. There's 2 more we don't know about. Who knows? Anything else could happen. Creep Tapes season 3, it is definitely an enigma for now, and I'm excited to see what comes from it next month. Last but not least is this big story talking about It Welcome to Derry season 2. Now, we already learned that we were going back to 1935, but Andy has talked a little bit about like what the hell is actually happening here, how this season is going to focus more on like the Bradley gang, this big massacre that happens with a bunch of like gang members. It's going to be a really interesting season and a totally different vibe than season 1, I think. And Muschietti even said of the season, Derry is a graveyard almost. It's a carcass of something because people are depleted, poor, tired, jobless, homeless. Great Depression kind of vibes, right? The kids don't have a suburban, comforting life like how they have in pretty much everything else that has been Andy Muschietti since. I like this because I think it's going to be a more challenging story to tell, just like season 1. Like, we dealt with some pretty heavy themes there, and we did them pretty well, in my opinion. I really enjoyed it. Welcome to Derry season 1. If I'm being honest, and I don't know if this is a hot take or not, it is probably my favorite thing that is in the It universe, that whole season 1 of television. I never, in a million years, never did I think I would be saying that, because when I heard about the show, it was just kind of one of those things that felt like, oh, we're trying to hit off of It because it's like uber popular. It 2017 at the time, I believe it still is actually, is the most profitable or highest grossing horror film ever made, which is crazy. I mean, that movie's really good. Does it deserve all that money? That's a different conversation. Bill Skarsgård as the clown, though, super iconic, and to see him back again in the show, amazing. And the kids also were great. I mean, that's not easy to do. I've seen some things recently, actually. Ice Cream Man. Where the kid actors just aren't necessarily up for that kind of story, I feel. And, to get somebody who is so talented at such a young age, it's not an easy thing to do. So I thought that was really impressive, and I'm really excited to see where the next season goes. But it sounds like we're getting into something else this season with the gang, mafia kind of vibes coming into town. We're dealing with some like Great Depression stuff, which I think is a really interesting thing to deal with in a horror story context. I don't think I can name too many other horror stories that take place during the Great Depression. It's a time that I feel like, right now we're going through a lot of horrible economic things here in the United States, and to kind of do a story in the Great Depression, I think it's going to be really relatable. It's going to be like, I see it, I can see that. I can see how I feel for these characters who are going through a rough time. And that's an important thing for a good story in the modern era. You got to do something relatable. You got to do something that's going to hit it home for people to really, really connect with it. So I'm personally all about this. I can't wait to see where season 2 goes. We were left on, not a cliffhanger is the wrong word, but we were left on this little idea that Pennywise experiences time different than we do. He already knows that he's going to die because of Richie. So he still has the opportunity to kind of fuck with the timeline no matter where he stands in it. So that means that even though we know the outcome of all of this, that can still change. We can still split off into an alternate universe where, the timeline shifts, and we can maybe get some of the characters from the movies entering these different storylines. And I think that's what we're about to get into with season 2, diving into, present day. Maybe Pennywise messes with things enough to prevent his own death, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens. Maybe this is leading into an It Chapter 3 that, again, changes up the story, expands upon it. They want to milk every single last bit of milk out of the Pennywise teats. And can you really blame them? I can't. Look, if they keep putting out stories that are this high quality, I won't be complaining. Lots of really fun stories today, ladies and gentlemen. Which had you the most excited? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Guys, thank you so much for watching the first episode of the Joy of Pain podcast. And as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all.